little dark there, Kaiju.
What?
You're a little dark in front of the camera.
Yeah, we had to take out. We had a light bulb that was hooking up to people's Bluetooths while they were going by, and it's one of those strobe light cameras that, like, when it hears music, it starts going to the beat. So we were randomly talking, and it would go on, and suddenly it would look like a strobe light was going off in my room. Wow. And it would play the music at top volume, whether they're playing it at. So unfortunately, things like Baby Got Back would start playing through. So we had to take it out temporarily. We're looking to replace it. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us once again, The Monsters of Gaming. I am Kill 'em All Kaiju K, and with me here is Nuke 'em All Necro Nick.
Hello.
Slash 'em All Subliminal.
Hello.
And Dig 'em All a Bunch of Holes, Deathgasm. And special guest, Geneva Convention Juggernaut Jared.
Hello.
He was not able to prepare himself because he's had a hell of a week, and when you have to deal with family that you do not get along with, you tend not to have a good week. I fully understand that. So he'll be part for the laughs. Now, in case you guys don't remember, a week or two ago, hi Mama Bear.
Hello.
Mama Bear and Rebel Vandy have opted out for this one. If you don't forget, a few weeks ago, we did a live stream on the weird and wacky things we always wanted to purchase. You know, things like cheeseburger bean bags and 55 gallons of slippery lube that you could put on a slide and go 90 miles per hour down the hill on. And then at one point...
Enter another dimension.
Right. At one point, I don't know exactly who started it. I want to say it was K-Man.
With his trebuchet.
I want to say it was K-Man. But at one point, K-Man decided... And I noticed he's mysteriously missing here. At one point, K-Man started this little thing where he was going to start attacking people with a trebuchet because they had a castle, which was then involved by somebody bringing out drones. And then I brought up a point about how I always wanted to own a missile silo, and suddenly everyone's like, he's got missiles! It's like, that's not what I wanted. I want to build a house out of it. And it got a little loopy. So this week, TMOG's going to war. The idea is simple. Each one of us will represent our own nation. Now, this nation is not going to be anything big. Think of us around second, third world countries as far as military influence goes. We're definitely not England. We're definitely not America, Russia, or China, or any of the other massive countries out there. So we're basically going to explain what our militaries are capable of. There are a few slight rules. I will now read them really quick so everyone gets a hint of it. First one is no weapons of mass destruction. Just to tell you how it works, countries that haven't reached that level of first world country tend to be completely and utterly decimated if they try to make weapons of mass destruction. For instance, if Subliminal decided to try and make a nuke without telling any of the other nations and they found out, his country would disappear faster than a bag of beef jerky in front of me. It would just be gone. They would make sure that he could never get a chance to fire off that nuke. Second, only weapons that are currently available, you know, no lightsabers, no AT-AT walkers, although I have seen people make weapons similar to lightsabers that cost about 6 months worth of an electrical bill to have on for 16 seconds. So, I mean, if one of these guys wants to run that, just remember your country's going to poverty right quick. We need to understand your basic soldiers, your basic combat vehicles, and your basic aircrafts. These are kind of the things that you really require for your army. Naval, it's not actually as big as a lot of people think. Not a lot of countries actually have naval warfare, or if they do have it, it's so small that most countries just don't even accept it. Now for special reasons, because they were so helpful in giving me the information required, our countries will be basing ourselves off of the English military. Why? Because they gave me tons of information that would be easily available. You can look it up if you want to tell us exactly what we would be going up against. If your soldiers have any specialized training, you can bring that up. We don't have to accept the Geneva Convention, okay? That means if you feel like gunning down paratroopers as they're escaping their planes, that's perfectly legal. We ain't going to judge you for that. And then finally, this is going to be
Wait,
judged.
that goes against the Geneva?
Oh yeah, as long as they're not holding a firearm, you cannot shoot them until they grab their firearm. By the Geneva Convention, you have to wait for them to land and then grab their firearm before you're allowed to legally shoot them. Of course, none of our enemies ever believe in that BS, but hey, I mean, as a military soldier, I was forced to believe in the Geneva Convention. That being said, I don't believe in the Geneva Convention.
World War II, they'd be shooting them out of the sky.
Not for nothing. I'm not trying to get myself in trouble with the military or anything like this, but if I were overseas being attacked by enemy soldiers and one of them paradropped and I saw a firearm on them, I'd put them down before they got a chance to use it. That's against Geneva Convention, but that's also saving a number of lives. Just saying. We will be judging each army based on 5 simple rules. The army's overall firepower. This is basically how much lead you're slinging downrange. An army that's attacking with sticks is not going to be nearly as effective as an army using bullets. Next up, cost of creating these things. Everything is expensive in the military. Y'all might not know that, but it ain't cheap to make a firearm in the military. Either is it to make a tank or a jet. I mean, there are some jets that cost close to $1 million, some that cost more than $1 million to make one. Look at a stealth bomber. Those things are, I think they're close to like $13 million to make one. It's pretty expensive. In fact, just being in the Air Force is expensive. You get a chance to ask an Air Force a pilot, ask them how expensive their freaking load is. They'll tell you how expensive it is. Next, upkeep costs. It takes a lot to be able to control certain things. For instance, if you're using like an old Leopard tank, I mean, you could just turn off the engine. However, if you're running something like a Panzer tank or a drone, which has high-tech gadgets and technology and all kinds of other things attached to it, those are going to start cost you a bit of upkeep. Next of all, survivability. You're going to war, you need to be able to actually stand on your own 2 feet. That being said, you're not going to be able to do it if you're running around in grass skirts while screaming at the top of your lungs and have a bunch of horses running towards an M1 Abrams tank. You're just going to give them something they want to shoot at. And trust me, you do not want them to shoot at you. Last but not least is their general overall effectiveness in the world. What this means, it might seem to throw you off a little, I'll explain this one. What this basically means is how well your military is against other parts of the world and how other parts of the world are more than likely to discard your military. For instance, if you're somebody who's going to say, I don't know, give out a bunch of free food and then lace it with some very, very addictive drug, the militaries around the world are probably going to flatten your country and sell it as a parking lot. Be careful with that. That being said, I think you're pointing at sub. I can't tell which one Nick's pointing at, but I believe down is sub. So we have 4 people here tonight, of course, and I first want to get off by saying, is there anybody who wants to volunteer, or shall I go first?
I would actually like to go first.
Oh, Necro. Okay, Necro. Explain to me your ideas for a military. What are you bringing to the table as a military?
Oh, first start off with the normal assault rifle category.
Okay. Now listen, you don't have to get specific if you don't want to. Just saying, you can be as specific as you want. You know, you all know me. If I'm going for assault rifles, the M4 carbine. But I'm just saying, no. That's not an assault rifle.
With one I've used in more than one video.
Okay.
I believe it's called the XM4.
You mean the
one that's
You mean the XM8?
Yes.
Yes.
The one that's
the modular rifle.
Talented.
Yeah, the modular rifle. Yes. The XM8 is a modular rifle that the military was thinking of using, and then started griping about things like, well, the battery doesn't last long enough. It's made of plastic. It hurts my hand when I shoot 300 rounds downstream, even though in most effective combats you will never shoot 300 rounds downstream, especially if you're accurate and well-trained. Marines. Yes, the Marines were the ones that were complaining about it getting overheated after 300 rounds. It's not an LMG, guys. It's
Not meant for that.
right. It's not a suppressive machine gun. It's not firing 50 cal rounds. It is a weapon designed for...
Maybe it's because the Marines see more combat.
Listen, if a Marine has to shoot 300 rounds downstream, they are not a good Marine. I have seen Marines train. They are dead shots. If they're firing 300 rounds downstream in less than 10 minutes, either they are completely overrun, in which case they should be retreating, or they're just shooting their fannies off because they can't hit the target. In which case, the Marine next to them is more than likely just going to shoot them to save the ammunition. Just saying. Listen, I respect all branches of the military except for the reserves, but still.
If they're shooting 300 rounds downstream, they went to stormtrooper training.
Yeah, seriously, that's 10 magazines being loaded into this thing. There's no reason you should be firing that much. But anyways, continuing on, yes, the XM8 is in my opinion, it was a wonderful rifle. I enjoyed the weight behind it. I enjoyed the accuracy it had. I enjoyed the modular capabilities. It could be alternated between an assault rifle and a sniper rifle. You could have shotgun attachments to it. It was basically a multi-purpose weapon. What, you're going into urban ops, switch it over to a shotgun mode. What, you need long-range combat, switch it over to a sniper rifle round. Now, mind you, it's not as accurate as a sniper rifle, but definitely more accurate than firing a small assault rifle downrange and hoping a bullet hit it. I'm sorry, Nick, please continue. I ranted.
Well, that's why I would choose that weapon, because of its multi-purpose.
Versatility.
Being able to have the turn it into an SMP, a sniper. We're gonna have like, I'm gonna say what, roughly our army should be about 200 to 500 people.
If that's all you want, a standard military operations is somewhere around like 20,000 units.
Oh, really?
But you don't have to be, they don't all have to be infantry. For instance, if you look at a group like, say, China, they have a massive infantry component. Whereas if you look at a country like Russia, their infantry component isn't as large, but damn do they have tanks. Not to lie, but I would rather go up against, no offense, I would rather go up against the Chinese than I would Russia, simply for the fact that it's a lot easier for my rifle to pierce a Chinese soldier's armor than it is an M1 Panzer.
True.
Or any other of the dangerous weapons that they have over there in Russia.
I'll base off the normal standard about, 15 to 20,000 people. So at least probably about 5,000 people would probably be carrying them. Probably 1,000 of, like, the sniper variety to start off with. Of course, they'll always have the backpacks and have the other attachments.
Right.
To swap out, because it's quick swap out.
Well, right, and the fact is the XM8 wasn't exactly, I mean, at the time, as was a prototype, it was expensive to make, but if they would have taken they would have just taken it, it would have been so much cheaper and easier to replace, and I'm sorry, ranting again. Continue.
But yeah, like, each category of the variety of gun it could be would probably be like the start off for 1,000, like, each category would be 1,000 units.
Right. Well, I mean, that gives you quite an effective military, because not only do you have to worry about it, but for instance, you come in with assault rifles, everyone thinks you have assault rifles, and suddenly sniper fire starts raining down on them. They decide you're snipers, so they go in close quarters combat, and they meet the side end of a shotgun. Gives you a bit of unpredictability. Okay, what else are you bringing to the table?
I figured the, like an armor-plated Humvee. With, there'll be two different varieties, one being a rocket launcher attachment or like a grenade launcher attachment.
Okay, so some anti-armor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the normal standard, like 50 cal
and anti-infantry. Nice. A bit of firepower on the roof and being able to hold a couple soldiers of transport. That's pretty useful.
And then also for like about 500 of them, I also want them to have sensors.
What?
It's for like 200 to 500 of the Humvees, I would also like them to have sensors.
Okay, go into detail on that one. What do you mean?
Sensors, the things that log on to aircraft.
Oh,
be able
SAM
to-
turrets. SAM. I'm sorry.
Yes.
My hearing isn't that well. I thought you said sand turrets.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what are you going to do? Sandblast them? That would hurt. First of all, that would hurt. If any of y'all have accidentally hit yourself with a sandblaster.
Flesh.
What?
That would strip flesh.
Yeah, seriously.
That would be really against the Geneva Code.
Oh, yeah. Well, she got there. It's a
I know we're
giant...
not following
Yeah, but
it. I know we're not following it. But if someone created a weapon that stripped the skin off of people like that,
Oh, it hurts.
that would be on the Geneva Convention quicker than you could blink a fucking eye.
I never hit myself with a sandblaster directly, but I did get close enough for a wall for it to fling back on me, and it did rip my skin wide open. I'm just thinking, Nick's got these giant CO2 cartridges on the back of a freaking Humvee, and just drives through the middle of town, just starts sandblasting people as he's driving by. Oh, the eyes, everything just, ah! Drive up to a tank and just stick it into one of the freaking ports and just fire. Just,
I could go one worse.
what?
It can switch from sandblasting to pressure wash to power washing.
No, we can't talk about that anymore because of Power Wash Simulator. Now we can't talk about that. Same idea though. Now you got water coming. Now you got strippers.
Pressure washer.
Yeah, now you got steel. Now you got freaking water pressure coming in too. Ugh. All right. So what else are we talking in your military? You got very variable vehicles and very variable soldiers. What else do you bring?
For aircraft, I would probably just keep it standard with like Raptors, not like stealth bombers or anything. I don't want to go that expensive and run my military into the ground. But, you know, your normal, just
F-22s and Apache helicopters, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Would you be talking Navy, or are you talking not going to waste my money on those big expensive boats?
I'm not thinking I'm gonna waste my money on the big expensive boats. If anything, I would have one carrier, and that may be it.
Okay, all right. Anything your military would specialize in? Would there be a specific tactic? Like, what kind of warfare are you bringing to the field? Are you the honor bound? Hey, we're gonna give you 3 days, or the hey, gotcha, bitch, just shank a man? I mean, what are we talking here?
Oh, my guys are definitely gonna be stealth because they're gonna already be running around and like, I'm pretty sure there's some kind of prototype stealth, like
there is there's an optical dissipator armor that they were talking about, which basically takes your body temperature and makes it the temperature around, so thermal vision can't see you. As for stealth goes, pitch black armor is still the way to go. There is some reflective armors out there, but pretty expensive and heavy.
I was thinking the pitch black, but also have the non-thermal detection.
All right, well, that would actually make it very useful for nighttime combat. And what would you guys like? You know, let's say that you were going to go toe to toe with the British Army itself. You know, it's got its Leopard tanks and everything. What would be your strategy for trying to defend? Like, would you be like a terrain based? Would you be, shutting down supply lines? Are you taking pictures of the Queen and sending nudes to everybody? What are you doing here? Because that could be kind of creepy. That would definitely make me not want to fight you anymore. Just,
I am gonna run some tanks too, of course. But like they're your normal, like not Panzer level, but like lower than Panzer, but not much lower.
So lightweight tanks.
Yeah.
More like geez, what would they be like? Like somewhere around a Bradley.
I want them to be fast moving, they'll pack a punch kind of deal.
Okay, so like a Bradley would be. Like a Bradley is a lot of people don't look at a Bradley as a tank, but if that cannon starts ringing down, it will strip a tank quick. It may not destroy the people inside, but that thing could just roast a tank's turrets. It could jam it up. It could take out the treads. It could take out the engine. A lightweight tank. I got you.
Yeah.
Is that all you want to mention about your army?
No, like advantages kind of would be more urban to ambush.
So you're more sneak attack methods, You're not going to fight somebody in open combat. You're going to snipe them and hit and run tactics, that kind of stuff, guerrilla warfare.
I mean, they'll be able to stand toe to toe, but they more specialize in that stuff.
Okay, okay.
You know, like underwater diving into a area that you know the enemy's camping at kind of situation.
Okay.
Shit like.
Okay. All right, so let's go through your army real quick. Let's go through overall firepower. Your army doesn't have a lot of firepower. It's definitely an anti-infantry kind of army, which is actually good nowadays because, you know, not a lot of armies do send a lot of tanks in.
Right.
You still have that capability. You have very fast-moving vehicles, so it's probably harder to hit them. You're using a basic air force, so it's about as threatening as a standard air force would be. But you seem to really be focusing mainly on being able to just be ready for any situation. Your soldiers have the XM8s, which allows them to swap between different fire modes. You have different forms of the Humvees. So, I mean, I'll give you about a medium as far as overall firepower. Cost of creation, you're a dirt cheap army by creation standards. XM8s are very cheap. The most expensive thing you're really bringing from that army is that specialized armor, which will be expensive, but, you know, not as expensive as trying to fuel several destroyers. The British military, more than 50% of its cost goes to their Navy. You know, they have all the same branches the U.S. Army does, and 50% of it goes towards their navies, just to give you an example of how expensive their Navy is. Not the kind of Navy you want to f with either. They'd bombard they wouldn't come near you. You have to come to us in the mountains, and they would just bomb the mountains out of existence. They would just make sure there was nothing left. They'd be like, what mountains? Cost of upkeep would be very cheap. You're not using a lot of advanced weaponry and armor, so, you know, no chemical fires, no laser designations and things like that. You know, that's pretty good right there.
I would also have a little bit of drones just to scout as well.
So would they be offensive drones, or would they be more the scouts?
They're just scouts.
Okay.
Making my ambush tactics a little easier.
No, I could definitely see that. A scout, you know, a small drone with a thermal scope could easily see and track soldiers. And even vehicles.
Right.
And last but not least, your overall effectiveness. You seem to be able to handle a lot of things. I don't think you'd be ready for something like, say, Russia to come after you. But you'd be able to do pretty well against others, and you don't seem to be very evil or vicious or anything with that with your tactics. So I'm pretty sure the rest of the world probably wouldn't want to come after you. So that's pretty good, you know, chance of survival right there. Very good there, Necro. Would Sub or Deathgasm like to go next, or Deathgasm wants to go? Deathgasm. I'm interested in seeing what your military's bringing to the table. I really am. I am so ready.
Honestly, what I was joking about before is nothing like my plan.
I had a feeling about that.
Yes.
I had a feeling about that. I know Sub isn't the kind of guy that would lace food with LSD either. I think.
I think that would be pretty funny.
He ain't denying it. He ain't denying it, so he might be capable of that kind of stuff. Well, watch out.
I think it would be really funny for a couple of days to watch people trip out.
I could just imagine a bunch of people getting this food. Like,
I just think that'd be kind of funny.
It's like, he sent us all this beef jerky, and we rejoice, and the next thing you know, my skin's falling off, and he's just sitting back there.
Basically just trolling other countries.
Just trolling the other countries.
LCTC combo.
He's over here cracking up too. He's cracking up too. Oh. Beware his Twinkies. They're laced.
I freshly baked some brownies. Would you like some?
Of course I would. I have the munchies. All right, Deathgasm. Bring the death and the gasm.
Okay. My troop count is going to set at about 30,000.
Okay, that's a respectable number.
And it's not more for the manpower, just to mainly arm all the things I kind of want to implement.
Okay.
And guard certain things I want to implement.
Okay, so your infantry would be more engineer corps level. Maybe some mortar squads to keep things defensive, that kind of stuff. But mainly you're going to be using, I'm guessing, unmanned or manned vehicles that are being used from remote, perhaps?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Well, let me get to the real kicker of my army.
Okay.
You know how the Green Berets are trained to go into countries and basically destroy the government? Like, this basically cause so much confusion, the government suffers so bad, and the country kind of falls off.
So, you know, Spetsnaz, Green Beret, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have probably a good 400 to 500 men trained in that specialty.
Oh. Oh. And I thought laced brownies were the least of my worries.
But you won't know where they're at, who they are.
That's the whole point.
Who knows? They could just be in my own country heading out, and they could go on a trip.
Right.
If shit starts not liking how I like shit to go in the world.
So spies and assassins are already on his list. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, that's an effective tactic.
Artillery.
Artillery? Okay, artillery is a nasty thing to run into.
Not just standard artillery. I'm gonna have 5 rail guns.
Rail guns?
Or would they fall under mass destruction?
Oh, no. Well, I mean, the impact they could cause. But no, rail guns are definitely artillery at this point in time. Until they get a rail gun big enough. But, I mean, rail guns, those are...
Like, I know rail guns are freaking vicious. Like,
the problem with
how they work.
The problem with railguns currently is the charge and cooldown they have. A railgun can fire a single shot that can just absolutely mess up whatever it hits. I'm talking, there isn't an armor in the world that could survive a hit from a railgun right now. But once this thing fires, it takes like 30 to 40 minutes for the barrel to cool down. You're talking one shot, you know, per hour. But that one shot, usually all you'll need.
And having 5 of them with a couple hundred infantry soldiers guarding it.
Yep, I can see.
Plus radar systems to detect planes or boats.
Well, the problem with the boats are that the boats would be well outside of your radar range. But if you got fucking rail guns, it's one of those rules like, hey, we're within range to shoot the railgun. The railgun is within range to shoot you. You know, the railgun sees a Navy carrier with a railgun on it. Now it's everyone pushing that button to see who fires first.
So my plan is to use 3 of the railguns to hit targets,
and
2 of them to defend long range, and give alerts of what else is coming.
Okay, so that's some serious level of firepower right there.
I'm thinking about maybe a baker's dozen of stealth bombers. That way I could send them out to defend.
You have an extremely large bombardment strategy. There's nothing wrong with that. If the enemies ain't there to hit you, they ain't there to hit you.
Yep.
There are several armies out there, like the Swedish military, which follows a similar thing. Oh yeah, you could come at us. Go ahead. You want to bring tanks? Be our guest. Hey, what's that coming down from the sky? The only way you can get towards them is if you either outrange them or somehow avoid the shells.
Not. Talking about Bobby?
Of course. The jetpack.
I'm also thinking I might have a few battleships, like maybe 4 or 5.
Okay.
And 2 carriers for the stealth bombers.
Okay. That's quite a large amount of naval warfare, but that's still pretty good. I mean, once again, naval warfare is terrifying. The worst thing about naval warfare is a lot of countries, they don't use navies. So they're not prepared to attack navies. It's one thing for you to have a single carrier, but when you're up against somebody who has 10 carriers and 30 destroyers, your one carrier doesn't mean anything. Unless what you're carrying is, supermodels and refugees or something. Okay, so that's a... Keep going.
4 submarines.
Now, by submarines, are you talking about anti-ship? Or are you talking about ballistic?
What is ballistic? I never heard of ballistic.
A ballistic submarine would be something like a Seawolf class submarine from the Russians. Basically, it's a ship that gets underneath radar, gets close to the area where it's going to attack surfaces, and then deploys missiles from its core before sinking back down and retreating once again.
I might go a couple ballistics now.
The Russian Seawolf, they only made 3. Only made 3. Or should I say they only told everybody about 3 of them.
2 of the ballistics.
There you go. Who we killing? I'd use Novichok on them. And Mr. Michael White has joined us.
And for my tanks, I know there's tanks out there that can go into water and kind of act as a ship.
Those are amphibious vehicles, and there are several of them. They've actually been out since World War I. There's lots of them.
Yes.
Those are not unheard of.
I just don't know the technical names of them.
We could just use the term amphibious tanks for right now. Listen, you're not going to go you're not going from 30 miles per hour on land to 30 miles per hour in the water. No, you're not moving that fast. But it's another thing for you to suddenly see a bunch of tanks pop up on your shore that were not there a few minutes ago. Kind of makes it hard for you to defend against them when suddenly they're there.
Are you talking about the ones that can go in the water?
Yeah, the ones that have. They're not very fast in the water, but you don't expect them to be there.
Right.
Nick, Michael
I'm
says
thinking
Nick.
I'm thinking probably about 500 of them.
All right, that's a pretty good amount of armor. The only fatal flaw the aquatic tanks had was they had to be lesser armored. Now, once again, saying a tank is lesser armored is like saying I took off my sweatshirt and still wearing a t-shirt. Okay, that's we're not talking they took like 8 inches of armor off these things. They probably shaved 1 inch or 2 inches. They're still not going to go down very easily. But that's still a terrifying thought process. Once again, I never had to deal with something like that, but I do know that there were a lot of tales in World War I, II, and even Vietnam where there wasn't a tank there, and then there was a tank there. Just crawling out of the water, and people tend not have a chance to really react to that. If you see a guy coming out of the water with flippers,
imagine the mind fuck that you would see. Like could you imagine one day you're looking across the beach and then there's 500 fucking cages rolling up.
That's what I'm saying. If a bunch of soldiers come out of the water in scuba suits, that's like, oh, scuba. 500 tanks roll out of the water. It's like, what? You're still trying to figure out what you just saw before they start unloading rounds downfield. Novichok in the water and kill them all.
The primary rifle that my men will use would be the M4 carbine, because it may not be as customized visible as like ARs, but for what it could do, it's great.
Yes.
For the sidearm, I'm going with 1911 because a gun that's been around since 1911 is a good fucking gun.
Yeah, I say they're actually a pretty effective.
I know you don't. I think 1911s are one of the best guns out there.
Listen, I'm still a fan of the freaking Colt 45. Okay, don't get me wrong. Fan the hammer, brother. Fan the hammer.
But that's a lot of firepower. I kind of want people to be able to pull and fucking shoot without fucking having the gun freaking come off.
Makes sense, right?
And especially if they miss their grip, like you can't have too much firepower in a single shotgun because if you have to pull that thing quick and you don't have your hand set right, you might blow the gun out of your fucking hand.
Well, that's why Desert Eagles are not.
Your nerves are shot.
Well, like I said, that's why Desert Eagle magnums aren't standard in any military. Sure, you could put a hole through the person, the door behind them, the engine block of the truck they were just in, the dog next to them, and the person watching the dog. But the kick on that thing, if you're not holding it properly, you could do a lot of damage to yourself, too.
Yeah. And for the sniper, I am thinking it's the one Ruger sniper that the U.S. uses. I believe it's a Ruger.
Ruger's a well-known firearm manufacturer of the United States military, so there's lots of them.
Yeah, I forget which one.
Do you happen to know the round size,
I'm pretty
perhaps?
sure it's like a... I think it's a 308 round.
Okay. Jeez. 308 Ruger. Ah, jeez.
But think about it. A 308 round's pretty fucking deadly at long range.
Yes, it is.
Especially since they make some specialty for
Tons of them. Tons of them. Yeah, I typed in 308 Rugers and the list just popped up. It's just too many to look at. But I understand what you're saying. Well, I mean, what else are you bringing to the party? Like, what is your army's main method of combat? Like, what would you say is
disassemble governments?
Okay. Let's say that let's say you're stretching
Before I
out.
go to war with anyone, those insurgents are going in and fucking shit up.
Well, right. And while it has been shown to be very useful, it's not always 100% effective. But if they don't know it's going, just remember that the most important thing, the most important rule of war, if you have spies in a country, they have spies in yours. That's just how it works.
Yep.
It's up to you to have the better spies. That's all it comes down to. If Subliminal has spies in Necro's country, Necro already has spies in Subliminal's country. And it doesn't even have to be a well-trained spy. It could just be somebody that's being bribed money, because unfortunately humans are stupid and evil creatures. And we're greedy.
Yep.
But yeah, okay, so your main method is basically to not go to war if you don't have to. Now, what if you have to go to war? Like, what is your primary idea for dealing with your opponent? What are you doing?
Well, since we're basing it off the British, I am staying as far away and barraging them as much as I can.
All right, so
freaking out of their range.
Right, barrage based
under seas.
Yep. A few. Yeah.
You said we're basing it off the British military, which they're big sea boys.
Well, of course they are.
I think I'm pretty well set on taking care of sea boys, especially with the stealth bombers. Being able to drop a missile right overhead and freaking put it through their deck.
All right.
Gonna cause some damage.
All right.
Gonna be quick about it too, because those stealth bombers are fucking fast.
Not as fast as you'd think, actually. The big thing about stealth bombers is their armor allows them to basically become invisible. They're usually a lot faster after they drop the payload, though. They usually come in with a heavy payload, drop it, and then get the hell out of there. That's when they're fast. The problem is when a stealth bomber is coming into combat, they're not that fast at all. I mean, they're fast. Don't get me wrong. I can't outrun a stealth bomber with a full payload. But you just let's what? Do you have anything else you want to mention about your military force here, or is that basically it? In a nutshell.
That's basically it.
Be right back.
Okay, man. Okay, so we'll start with the first part of this little happy horse, the overall firepower. 5 fucking railguns! Don't think I have to go any further than that. Anybody else? No? Nobody? No? Alright, didn't think so. I'll tell you this much. You definitely have my military beat as far as overall power goes, too. Woo! Now,
Only if I have to use it.
Right. Now,
Well,
survivability.
you're gonna have a situation where you need 2 keys and 2 people basically to fucking activate it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, he's just saying if he
Kind of
doesn't
like how the
have
government
to,
has 2 keys to press a button.
if he doesn't have to fire a $3 million round downstream, he's not going to fire a $3 million round downstream. That's about the estimated amount of power it costs to fling one of those rounds. It's about $3 million per shot. It's a pretty expensive round, but whatever it hits does not exist anymore. They've gone through mountains with railguns before. I mean, it's just take a bunch of magnets, line them up, and then take a piece of steel and put it in there and just launch it. That's what a railgun does. I mean, they're more effective now. They use specialized rounds nowadays, but it's pretty effective. So as far as survivability goes, you're a very highly experienced group of ranged combatants. You deal with air targets, you deal with sea targets, you deal with land targets. So as long as nothing can get past your air defenses, you're going to be pretty stable. You're going to be pretty strong. Now let me go into the 2 categories that I think you're going to suffer the most in.
Yes, the price.
First of all, cost of creation. Need I remind you that the estimated shot price for a single railgun is $3 million.
And you have 5.
You have 5 of them. Not to mention your...
Which means you at least need 1 for each.
At
least one for each.
Well, and he's not going to want 1 for each. He's going to want multiple for each.
Well, I'm just saying at least 1 for each. So right there, 15 mil.
Right. Then he's talking about having multiple
At
stealth
least.
bombers, which, by the way, stealth bombers, probably the most expensive aircraft made nowadays.
I feel like he's going to go in back before he can enter the war, to be honest.
In fact, his infantry is the cheapest part of his entire military. Because even amphibious tanks are specially designed tanks. Don't get me wrong. One of those things pulls up on a beach somewhere and no one's ready for it, it's going to do more damage than its price is. Then there's the cost of upkeep, which actually he's helped with that already, by the way. He's actually cheapened the upkeep of his military slightly. By doing so, at the beginning, he started talking about how his soldiers were basically just around to be basically an engineering corps, which means a lot of the repairs and everything are being done by his military itself, which wouldn't be costing this actual country all that much. So, I mean, his upkeep is still going to be expensive, but not nearly as expensive as it could have been if he would have said, well, then I'm going to have an army and all this, you know. He did cheapen it, so I have to give him credit there. That was pretty effective. Now, for the last part of this overall effectiveness, as far as offense goes, his army is quite powerful. I definitely wouldn't say it's going to be able to go up against a force like, say, the United States, who has equal weaponry, if not greater. But against a lot of armies, especially those that are around our level, the second and third world nation level, don't think there's anything out there other than somebody using a weapon of mass destruction that's going to really hurt him. And as for how nations respond, this is the problem with his military thought process. I'm pretty sure the other nations are not going to enjoy the fact that he has spies and assassins everywhere. I mean, there are countries like France who do that anyway. France is well known for having spies and assassins Hell, the French Prime Minister said, so what? We got spies, so what? We got assassins, what you gonna do about it? He literally told them go f themselves. A lot of countries don't trust France. See,
The French, the Italians,
It's not like they'll ever be able to do anything in war.
Scandinavians.
What do you mean? Information is key.
See, the big problem with your military is, while it is exceptionally powerful, it is. Don't get me wrong. As of this moment, I can tell you this for sure. Me and Necro, we are no match for you. We will stay away from that little island that's holding those 5 railguns, and we will never show up. We're not. I'm not that stupid. I'm not going up against some military that's willing to throw 3 million at me. No. All right, I'm definitely not going against somebody who's dropping stealth bombers like they're freaking 3 points from freaking Shaquille O'Neal. I ain't doing that neither. All right, that's a little too much firepower on my behalf. That's a little too expensive for what my military is capable of. However, you would probably be considered a world threat, which means if you stepped out of line, it wouldn't be one army going against you. It's one thing for, say, Britain to come after you. It's another thing for Britain, China, the United States, and Russia to come after you. That being said, though, France is in the same boat as you are. France already has openly admitted they have spies and assassins everywhere. The world considers them a bit of a threat, but since France hasn't done anything stupid like, I don't know, obliterated a small country because they said that he was too fat or something like that, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with being a world threat. That means that most militaries are not going to openly go against you. That's a good thing. Not necessarily a bad thing. You may be having trouble with trade agreements and things like that in the future. But what it comes down to is your country's a big enough threat that no other country's going to go, let's go invade them. What's that whirring sound? Where did half my military go? Just saying. Just saying. You may be a threat to the world. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, Russia and China are also considered threats to the world, but there's not a country in the world that's going to openly attack Russia or China or the U.S. If you are a country that openly attacks the U.S., it's okay. You can go for it. Just remember, that is not the U.S. you're against. The U.S. has friends.
The U.S. and the Allies.
Yeah, you're going up against a large portion of the world. If you didn't remember that, just remember what happened to the Nazis. They picked one fight against the wrong person, and they said, help me, my friends, and the world went, yo, what's up? That's what lost the Nazis the war.
I think we lucked out in the World War II.
Oh?
Honestly, if things didn't go right at some points, I don't think we would have survived that.
If they would have chose the one fight and they would have been patient enough to rebuild everything that they need in order to fucking actually still do a war, they would have won, in all honesty. But they decided, oh, let's just keep going, and that's what they popped up.
They spread themselves thin. That's actually what happened.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the problem was they had no choice. If it's a one-on-one conflict, spreading yourself thin is a bad choice. However, it was 1v13. They had no allies. It was the Nazis versus everyone in the alliance. Even if they had taken down one of those groups, there were still 12 more trucking in. And when you have no allies to back you up, and you're cornered, you either fight with your teeth and your claws or you surrender. The Nazis fought tooth and claw. They fought the hardest they could. They fought the strongest they could, but they were literally outnumbered. It was 200 to 1 on the battlefield. Tanks, aircrafts, and soldiers. It was 200 to 1 plus. Yes, they had chances to take back certain locations, but the problem was that when a hole opened up somewhere in Nazi Germany, the Allies filled that hole up. And they kept pushing. So Nazi Germany never had a chance to really rebuild. It wasn't given that moment. It was just a constant, it was like trying to stop a train by holding your hands in front of you. You might be able to slow it down a few millimeters, but eventually that train's going to get you. Yeah, put on roller
Like I
skates.
said, if they didn't choose the wrong fight, they wouldn't have had to deal with that at that
Yeah,
time.
like
They chose the wrong fight.
Like Michael White just said, NATO. That's all he has to say, NATO. Once again, though, like I said, as long as you're not one of those idiots like Nazi Germany trying to take over the entire world as one country versus a world, you're fine. And from what I can tell, you're not the kind of person that's going to try to take over the world. I think.
I'm gonna send you something quick on Messenger.
Just to give you a joke from another person from Russian Badger. We shot 3 of their boats. They dropped the sun on us twice. Just saying. You shoot me a message on Messenger, huh? All right. And Mike
It's just an idea for the end.
Okay, no problem. As soon as it pops in, I'll tell. All right, well, overall, I'd say your army is very, very dangerous. But actually, that was kind of my idea I had there. Actually, Deathgasm, I actually had that idea. Get out of my head or start paying rent. Get out of my head or start paying rent. He actually had the exact same idea I had. Okay, just saying. Just saying. 2 nuclear bombs.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Oh, wait, listen, don't wait till the end. The end's going to be fun. I'd say that your military would probably be the kind of military where people wouldn't screw with you. They wouldn't. They just would not screw with you. So that leaves, no problem. Well, that leaves 2 members of this army left. That leaves the subliminals, and that leaves the Kaiju of K's. So does the subliminals want to go next?
Yeah, sure.
All right,
The
subliminals.
question is, am I inland or am I by ocean?
That's up to you. You're your own nation. You could be an artificial island in the middle of the ocean for all I care. Heck, you could be Antarctica, and no one's going to screw with you in Antarctica.
I would be inland. I'd be inland.
Okay.
That way I'd have more area for defenses.
Okay.
Now, for my defenses, I'd go Japan style, where we fought in the forest and they have all those traps.
Okay.
Very cheap, inexpensive.
Nothing wrong with that.
And for my military groups, I would have probably 5,000-10,000 in just infantry.
Okay.
I'd have like 4 or 5 separate groups like the Nazis did, where they had their special SS group.
Mm-hmm.
Except one would be specialized like the Marines, one would be specialized like assassins, one would be specialized. I'm not having spies. I don't need spies. I would have some that are stealthy like ninjas, stuff like that. For the assassins, they would have heart attack guns as their pistol.
I've heard about
guns
those.
that shoot little pieces of ice, sides of the rice that melts after it goes in, so there's no evidence.
I've heard about those. Those were
Well,
pretty
if I had a heart attack, I wouldn't know what happened. So, that way nobody gets blamed. I'd have a group of poisoners and a group of explosive experts.
Okay.
And I have a big group of people that know how to shut down electrical grids.
Oh my goodness. Are we dealing with a terrorist unit here?
Electrical grid ain't that hard.
Well, actually, for a country, it
I
is.
mean to where it would take weeks to fucking fix.
Yeah.
Not all it got shut down.
He's talking about, when he says shutting down electrical grids, he's like saying taking out the Hoover Dam.
I was talking about like taking out the Hoover Dam. We're talking about making it so that the water supply's all fucked up.
Not clipping 2 wires.
I mean, crossing 2 wires that you freaking basically blow something in the system.
Well,
And it's gonna take a while to fix.
well, once again, you have to understand like how power grids work. They're specially designed so things like that actually don't affect them. For a power grid, a national power grid goes down.
I don't want it to be obvious right away either. So they have to learn also how to make it so that they can set it up.
So sabotage. You're talking about sabotage.
Before anyone even notices.
You're talking about sabotaging it, not instantly destroying it, but sabotaging it. So it will eventually go down, and when it does, there's no evidence behind of what happened. I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one person who would not want your army near them right now. I don't know which direction he's in, but Deathgasm would definitely not want his power grid being shut down.
Now, when I say explosive experts, I mean like people that know how to set up explosives that are cheaper than efficient.
Suitcase bombs and crap like that.
Where they're able to blow up tanks, tire tracks, basically make them immobile, stuff like that. You know, nothing like blowing up buildings or anything. Just something to like immobilize the army units and shit. And know how to plant mines and know how to write maps. That way they know where the mines are, so they can transfer the information to our group, so everyone knows. So basically, my army would basically be prevention / defense mostly. But
basically terrorism. What I do.
I might as well have my base in a cave, you know. And I have a bunker for that cave too, so.
I feel like setting up explosives and traps is like a terrorist move because they're too cowardly to fight anyone face to face.
Well, he hasn't gone to
I
his
didn't
actual...
say
Yo, first of
I
all,
didn't get to the guns or anything.
he hasn't even gotten to his military. He's just talking about his
I'm
army
just
special.
saying that's the main thing what terrorists do too.
That's right, like a group that would go and
Yeah,
dismantle
that's what all other armies.
just like a group that would go around
Japan
and dismantle
wasn't a-
governments, huh?
Japan technically wasn't a terrorist when they did their traps.
Dude, subliminal. Deep
Really?
breaths, man. Deep breaths. Remember, a terrorist cell is different from each country. The definition is
You got a point.
you know, just
You
saying.
got a point. You got a point.
For instance,
Um,
Deathgasm really has nowhere to talk here, as he literally has a group specially designed for killing off and assassinating government officials who are not trained combatants.
Right.
I mean, really? I mean,
My assassins are mainly to take out the commanders of the armies that we're facing. So
Hello,
that
Pot. Hello,
so that
Peddle.
breaks
You're
down
both
the
black.
chain. Mine's not political. Mine's army-based.
Ooh, Michael White's going with EMP-based weaponry. That's actually pretty dangerous. Actually, believe it or not, EMPs are not considered weapons of mass destruction.
Well, that's what my explosive group will also know how to do.
So
Since they're going to use explosives and everything.
your military specializes
No.
in sabotage. Once again,
Pretty much.
there ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what
No.
you know what the difference between a hero and a coward is? The coward gets rich off of the hero's song, so the coward lived through the battle. That's an old statement from Britain. That's the difference. Yes, the hero was the one who saved saved it to the end, but the coward who writes the stories about the hero is the one who makes the money off of it. In war, there is no such thing as a fair fight. That's one of the most important things y'all got to remember. Especially when it gets to me. Y'all understand when it gets to me.
The victor is the one that makes the story in history, not the loser.
War doesn't prove who's right. It proves who's left.
Hey, I'm looking at it. Does that mean I win?
Anyways, so let's get to your actual military, because sabotage is actually a very, very common tactic, but I don't think there's militaries around the world that truly specialize in it. So countering it would actually be quite difficult.
Well, that's where my military would mostly, like I said, I only have like 5,000 or 10,000 infantry.
Okay, well, yeah,
Well, everything else is basically the sabotage part. So it will be mainly specialized in sabotage.
okay.
Now, the sabotage areas, they'll have their hard attack guns, they'll have their sleep darts and stuff like that. Basically simple, lightweight materials.
Nothing wrong with that.
Because basically they're gonna, if they really want to go in for the kill, they can go and slit their throat afterwards if they really want to.
Right, like you said. Your whole military's point is not to destroy, but rather to make people fear ever coming after you. This is what I did to this country.
Right.
What can I do to you? I understand. And listen,
Right.
that is in some countries the definition of a terrorist. But let me tell you something. In war, if it's stupid but works, it's not stupid. It just works. We invented things like flamethrowers. Why? Because we didn't want to throw a grenade into a small cube and it might not hit anybody. So instead we dumped napalm on people and let them burn to death. The United States, we're well known for our troops. When Britain attacked us during with our resistance, they were running around in red coats. We were running around in brown uniforms. We were shooting from behind trees, popping up through bushes. They were marching in rows and honorable combat. And what happened in the end of that war, folks? Well, I may be drinking tea, but it ain't hot.
Nope.
Just saying. When it comes to war, there are 5 rules to war. These are 5 most important things you can remember. Never overestimate yourself. Never underestimate your opponents. Never go to war unless you can win. There is no dishonor in retreating because you can still win the war. You can lose the battle, but you can still win the war. And the 5th one, there is no such thing as a fair fight. There will never be.
I'm going to have desert around as well as forests, so there's also going to be sand traps and everything.
Okay,
So you're going to have to trek. You're going to have to trek through jungle. You're going to have to trek through a long-ass desert. So you're going to die from traps or dehydration before we have to deal with you. Or you'll be so tired that we won't have to really overpower you.
Well, that's a good
Now,
one.
my weaponry. What's up?
Well, keep going, keep going.
No, you kind of like when you're talking. So
There is a specific group that the United States lost to. Now, it's a tie between whether we lost or drew against them. But there is a military group that used very, very cheap tactics like punji sticks and small tunnels they dug underneath trees and were able to hold back the much stronger, much more high-tech military. That was Vietnam. All right? The whole point.
that's where I got my idea
I was going
from.
to say, remember, just because you're not as high tech as one military doesn't mean you're not dangerous. So you're using tactics that are considered cowardly. So you're using tactics that are considered cheating. Did you win the war? That's all that matters.
Now, for assault rifles, it's a mixture between FALs and AK-47.
I was
They're
waiting
the
for-
easiest to get.
I was waiting for somebody to bring the 47s to the field. Come on, guys, they're classics. They're like the 1911s.
I mean, come on,
They haven't
they're
been changed in so many
They're
years.
inexpensive, you know?
Like a
they're
1911.
inexpensive,
If it ain't
so-
broke, don't fix it. Once again, nothing wrong with
What?
it. Nothing wrong with it. Like I said, AK-47s and the falsest. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I personally like
Now, for shotguns, I was thinking of the one that, I think it's an AA, the one with the barrel that you attach, where you just, you know?
Okay.
Are you talking about that Russian one?
Yeah.
And it's like fully automatic?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're AA-12s.
Yeah, that's an AA-12.
Yeah.
That would be a
18s,
shotgun.
but it was the 18s.
That's a fucking terrifying gun, if you ask me.
Don't use trench
this-
guns in the
this would be-
trenches. Click, trench gun goes click, click.
Our pistols would be a mixture between Desert Eagles and the Russian pistol. I don't remember which one it is. The one with the long tip.
Makarov.
Okay, so it is a Makarov.
Makarovs.
Am I right on that?
You're correct on Makarovs. Yes, you are. Man,
Okay, so it'd be a mixture between the Makarov and Desert Eagles.
I feel like I'm
So
going
you don't know
against the
who's gonna
GLA
have
here.
Desert Eagle, who's gonna have Makarov.
It's Prince Kassad of the GLA.
But if I see you playing Desert Eagle and another one playing Makarov, I'm gonna know the difference. There is a big difference between those two.
Listen, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no, you're not gonna know anybody's
Polarized.
Dude, there's not a
You're
difference.
not-
If
you're
he's
not
already
gonna know.
pointing it at you, it's already a bad day. All right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a Desert Eagle pointing at you or a Makarov pointing at you, it doesn't matter. It's going to let rounds go downfield. One will fire faster, one will put a hole in you that's a lot bigger. You don't want to be hit by either one.
No.
No, for the main forces explosives, it's mostly going to be Molotovs and flashbangs.
Molotovs are quite effective. It's a
So
cheap,
get
easy to make
blinded
weapon.
and then get burned.
Right. A
Oh,
flashbang
then
is a stable, and suddenly everything's on fire, and you don't know which way to go. For a
The
person that's
Molotovs
been
will be for the desert area because obviously if you Molotov a fucking jungle, it's gonna eventually catch on fire.
Well, depends. Are we talking jungle or are we talking
Flat.
rainforest? There's a reason they don't use fire to clear cut rainforests. Trust me. There's a reason they don't use it. It doesn't work. Hey, we set everything on fire 3 rainstorms later.
Because either you're gonna fall into a pit, a trap, with the flashbang hitting you, or you're gonna get killed. Or neutralized. Either way.
Okay. Well, we're talking about your soldiers a lot.
One thing I have to say about your weaponry sub is there's a lot of variety to it, which will make it harder to supply at all.
Well, yes, but it's also very cheap.
See,
it's very cheap. Like the cost of his weapons compared to the cost of, say, I don't know, an M4 carbine.
If you're talking about the ammunition itself, I'm gonna have ammunition makers at base.
Well, sub, do you use any kind of vehicles or aircrafts, or are you just infantry? Because that's a question I actually have. I mean, if you're just if you're just infantry, that's one thing. But are you bringing any type of vehicles or aircrafts or navy, or are you just focusing mainly on vehicles? I mean, infantry.
I'm far enough inland where I don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so from what I'm guessing from how his continent is designed, it's probably a small beach followed by a rainforest followed by the actual civilized areas. That's not good for heavy vehicles to be going through. Just curiosity, man. I'm just asking curious questions. You're definitely falling down on the cheap but effective weaponry. Like I said, the AK-47 is one of the most effective weapons to ever be designed. Effective, not deadliest. Remember, there's 2 different terms. It's one of the most effective weapons ever created. Not one of the deadliest, but it's definitely one of the most effective.
No, I'm not really gonna have that many vehicles, just mainly transport for all the materials I'll need to build my own ammo and everything.
Okay, so transport.
I might have a drone. I might have a scout drone or here or there, but other than that, I'm not really gonna worry about vehicles other than transport really.
Okay.
Unless I have a broken down tank that I could use for mortars or something inside to shoot.
Man, well, I'll tell you one thing: his army is not going to be expensive. That might be his greatest advantage.
I'm also worrying about the food and everything and the clothing, and I'm not just worrying about the power and everything either.
Right, I know, man. Hey, not all of us are going to have the same military. We've had 3 militaries so far, and so far they have been drastically different from each other's militaries. And trust me, when I bring mine out, it is going to be drastically different from each of y'all's militaries.
Now, I cracked the joke, but I really was going to have a bunker.
A bunker?
So I could make the stuff in secrecy and everything. And
hey, listen, supplies are supplies. If a military's been in your area long enough where atrophy starts to happen, where they're having trouble with food and everything, and they find a small town that's been abandoned, they find food in there, they may eat that food, and if that food happens to be poisoned or drugged or something, there's no telling what could happen to them. That's yet again something that the Vietnamese did. They would leave small towns, they would abandon the towns and move them further in, and they would go and poison all the rice and the crops and everything, and when the soldiers came in and found that everything, and they cooked up the food to eat it, they regretted it.
That was the next thing I was going to mention.
I kind of guessed it because you're basically going down the tactics of the Vietnamese army. I could just open up the Viet Cong book and just start reading down the instruction manual to all the weapons that were there, and we've got it right here. He's the Vietnamese. With drones. With drones. There's the difference, though. He's got drones. See, there's a difference.
Scout drones.
Scout drones. But I mean, they're drones. They're drones. Drones and groans. Drones and groans. Juggernaut! He's back.
Yeah.
Oh, There's going to be poisoners. Like I said, there's going to be a whole selection, a slew of just specialized areas, basically. Because you're going to need the poisoners for the spike traps and shit, in case they still survive the spikes somehow.
Okay. Is there more you want to talk, or is that basically your army? Okay, well, let's once again go over the overall capabilities of your armies. Let's start with overall firepower. This I'm actually going to give something that might surprise everybody here, but I'm actually going to classify his overall firepower as quite high. Now, you might be saying, well, he's using Molotovs and small crap like that. Why would you say his army's so high? Well, the truth is, it's not that part that you got to worry about. I mean, AK-47s and Ruger, or AK-47s and Desert Eagles. I mean, Desert Eagles are expensive, but it's not like they have a lot of them. The big thing you have to worry about with him is not the army that you see, but it's the army you don't see and the things that are lying beneath the ground. He's got soldiers that are going to go into other countries. They're going to go into your country if you're at war with them. They're going to join up with your different groups, energy divisions and things like that. Energy divisions, sorry. Things like that. And they're going to slowly sabotage it, and it's going to look like this and that for a few days, and then suddenly you start losing things. It becomes far more costly to your military to keep that up. Not to mention that if a soldier is injured, he has to be carried out. If a soldier is killed, the body can be laid there until it's time to leave. So for every soldier he injures, just was what the Vietnamese did. They didn't want to kill you outright. They just wanted to take you out of the fight. Because it took 2 soldiers to carry your butt back. One to carry you, one to carry your gear. Because you didn't want that gear to get left behind. However, if we're talking direct combat, he's probably the weakest out of us. His weapons are not exactly designed for anti-arm or anti-air. There's no real anti-ground armor. But the lands he's in would make it very hard for us. He's not going to invade you. You'd have to invade him. He's the kind of guy that's using home turf advantage. Cost of creation and upkeep, I'm going to just make this into a
railgun just shoot through the...
Right. Well, like I said, like a railgun would just clear right through his damn armies. Okay, yeah, that's true. But then you go back to base and find out that every one of your generators was sabotaged. It's going to cost you millions to get them repaired. And it was because 6 guys joined up and then sabotaged them. You know, suddenly that $3 million round that you fired and took out most of his army is meaningless because it's going to cost you $40 million to fix everything that he dealt damage to. He's not going to win the direct fight. That's the thing I'm saying. He's not the direct fighter. He's the guy that's going to be in the shadows. By the time you know he's attacking you, it could be too late. And then however, the problem that he has against one army here, at least, which is Deathgasms, whichever, is that Deathgasm specializes in... Okay, there. He specializes in artillery. If he starts seeing traps in the forest, he may just rain artillery down throughout the forest. But once again, we're not going. We're going up against, say, England. And since England was on equivalent to us, I'd say that it would probably end the same way. It would either be considered a draw war or that he won. As far as cost and upkeep, once again, this is just a joke. I don't have to bring this into any further. I'm not trying to insult you or anything, but your upkeep is so cheap, I'm pretty sure they could work at the dollar store and be able to upkeep everything. All right? Like, you're not running a gigantic army full of... AK-47's not exactly expensive as far as a assault rifle goes. Punji sticks...
The most expensive weapon he has is the 58 cal Desert Eagle.
Right. Per capita, yeah.
The drones.
And the drones, but as far as upkeep goes between Nick's vehicles and a single rail cannon, we'll just use that as an example. All of Nick's tanks, a single rail cannon, his entire army could run on the same cost as these 2 things. Which means he would have more money for things like food and medicine and shelter. The cheaper army isn't always the worst army. And because of his tactics, however, well, we'll get to that soon. As far as survivability goes, I'd say his army has an extremely high survivability when not in direct combat. Once again, I have to split his military. The military that's all about sabotaging, trapping, and everything like that, they have really high survivability. The problem is once they get within range of somebody's main army, they're just hoping that they can hide behind trees long enough to get away. And finally, overall effectiveness. For what his military does, his military is probably one of the most effective so far. His military's main goal is to basically say, hey, here's the reason why you should never come near me again. However, once again, because of his mentality and thought process, it leads him to the same level as Deathgasm, where he would probably be considered a world threat. Even if he wasn't, even if he's just saying, stay the hell away from me or else, he would be considered a world threat. No army's going to want to fight him, but they're going to watch him like a hawk. If he screws up, he's going to disappear like Atlantis did. He'll just be a memory, a dream, a myth, a legend. So overall, I actually give him a pretty good score. In fact, I've given you guys all pretty good scores. Now for me to bring somebody who's going to get a low score. Hi guys, it's me, Kaiju K. Now I know what you guys are all thinking. It's Kaiju K here, so we're talking about stealth, ninjas, assassins, sniper rifles, high-end explosives, and railguns. Well, actually, you couldn't be further from the truth.
And the ex-military.
Since I'm the only one from the military, I'll be honest with you, that's not how I would fight. How I would fight, though, is with a different kind of weapon. It's a weapon that's never been allowed in combat because it's considered against the Geneva Convention. Hi, guys. I'm not part of the Geneva Convention anymore. My method of combat would be with DEWs, direct energy weaponry. What this means is I'm bringing things to the field that are very hard to defend against. For instance, in case you haven't heard about it, they designed a subwoofer, basically. It's a giant sound device that they could mount on a Humvee. They could fire it into a crowd, and it would basically cause nausea, vomiting, possibly seizures. It was stopped because of that, but I wouldn't stop because of that. I would have Humvees mounted with these giant speakers, and they have quite the range on them. There's also the microwave weaponry. This weaponry hits the water in your skin and starts to basically boil you alive. It was originally designed to shoot at protesters so it would burn their skin and they'd run away. And they found out what it does to the human eyeballs. Let's just say it was not used anymore. But in a tactical situation where you're up against a tank crew firing microwaves into a tank, which, by the way, would be a great way to shake the tank up, would be enough to basically end that tank's life. I don't have to destroy your equipment. I don't have to destroy you. I just have to incapacitate you. But with how I would use the weaponry, it would be used a little differently. There's no safety switch for mine. When that microwave fires at you, it's going to boil you alive. If you're in a tank or not. If you're behind a tree or not. Those sound waves that made you puke and throw up, they're coming at you. And your tank ain't stopping them. That wall you're behind ain't stopping them. They're coming for you. Flashbangs, you better believe it. Pepper spray, you know it's coming. In bomb form, in missile form, and in grenade form. My main mission is to stop your army from doing whatever it does with as few casualties as possible on both sides. And that's what makes me a scary soldier. I don't want to kill you. I don't want any of your soldiers dead. I don't want Deathgasm's engineering corps dead. I don't want any of the saboteurs and poisoners. I don't want the snipers dead. I want them incapacitated. You know why? Because it's just so much easier to deal with you guys. My main weapon is non-lethal combat. EMP weaponry, you better believe I'm wielding it. But that's not to say I'm not bringing lethal rounds too. For instance, unlike the Geneva Convention, every weapon that's fired from one of my infantry soldiers will be a tracer round. In case you don't know what those are, they're phosphorus-tipped military rounds. So if they hit you and stay in you, they're going to cook you the fuck alive. If I hit one of your fuel caches with one of them and it sits in there for a few extra seconds, boom! If I miss you but hit the house you're in and somehow it sets it ablaze, well, that's one less house I have to worry about. As far as my soldiers go, we are not going to be standing in front of you or hiding behind walls. No. In fact, if anything, my soldiers are going to be used as little as possible. My main weapon is going to be my vehicles. I will be using things like quads to drag trailers with mortars in them and with AA guns in them. I will be using strikers, which are a well-known military unit. They're basically an armored personnel carrier, but can have many types of weapons on top of them. Anti-tank rockets, anti-air weaponry, radar, anti-radiation systems. They're actually $1 a dozen for what they can and cannot do. Basically, it's a big, fast-moving armored Humvee. About double the size and double the wheels, and about triple the armor. My main goal will not be to attack you. I don't want to fight you. If I don't have to fight you, I'm not going to. That doesn't mean that if you don't stop screwing with me, I ain't coming for you. Think grenade launchers with smoke grenades, but in that smoke grenades are laced with LSD. Or other chemicals that can cause hyperventilation, paranoia, hallucinations. Oh yeah, I'm the dirty fighter, and you better believe I'm the dirty fighter. You're going to fire your railgun at me? That's fine. Fire your railgun at me. Just remember, when it suddenly stops working, and so does all your other vehicles, you better be looking for where I am. See, I believe in stealth. And stealth. And stealth. I believe that the secret to winning a war is to have as few casualties as possible. I want to win that war against you simply by forcing you to sign over a peace treaty. I don't even want you to surrender to me. If I kill your soldiers, that just makes you angry. That just makes revenge. And nothing's worse than an army that's pissed at you. Oh, trust me, if you take down 500 United States soldiers, they're going to stop sending soldiers after you, and now you're dealing with Bradleys and other very dangerous things. If you start firing artillery pieces at England, they're going to fire bigger artillery pieces at you, because let me tell you something, the cannons on the backs of those destroyers that the freaking English military is running in their navy are big, long-ranged, and will really rip the shreds out of you. I don't want to fight those, though. You see, I don't want that. When you go to your base and you find out a bunch of your soldiers are dead, tired, because they can't sleep because at night there's this droning noise going through, and eventually you find out that a mile away behind a wall, I've set up several of my strikers with our sound weaponry, and have only been firing when you're trying to sleep so you can't sleep, and I exhaust your entire military, you have to replace those soldiers, but they're not hurt. They need to be rehabilitated. They might need to be switched out, but guess what? That means you have to replace each of those soldiers and transport them away. That's more money towards... That's going to take time, and that's money you don't need. That's money that slowly starts trickling down as I begin taking your soldiers hostage. Not to kill them or anything. Basically, I'm going to strip them of all their weapons and send them home. Why? Because you still got to take care of them. And now I have your gear. My entire military will be based off of stopping you. If I have to be lethal, I will be. One of my most lethal weapons is something I saw in a very, very hated game. A lot of people didn't like it. And basically, it's a grenade launcher. It will just be underneath my M4 carbine that fires a standard 20 millimeter air burst grenade. Except when these lethal suckers hit, they detonate they hit the area with thermite instead. Close, thermite. Am I aiming it at your soldiers? No. No, no, no. That would be bad. But I'll aim it at everything else. For instance, to take a book out of good old Subliminal's guide here, I don't have to kill you, I just have to shut you down. My Air Force, my tanks, and my boats are all going to be protected by an adaptive armor system that was made by, I believe, the Swedish. Let me bring up the page real quick just to be sure. I want to make sure I'm getting it correctly here. It's the adaptive cloak from Sweden.
Yep.
Basically, it's stealth technology at its best. You see, when you go to scan with your night vision and your thermal vision, you don't see my tank coming towards you because how the armor works is it heats up and cools down areas around it and changes what the vehicle looks like on night vision and thermal. So what you end up seeing is a car driving towards you. Or perhaps a deer, as they've made their freaking tanks look like deer before. You don't know we're there. And then we start raining down shells with hallucinatory drugs and flashbangs, and basically everything to screw with you. And then we leave. We don't fight you. That takes too much time and money. Especially if I'm trying to take someone like Deathgasm on. Hell no am I going to try to fight that fair. One round of his is as much as several of my strikers cost. I don't want to fight that war. That doesn't mean that a few random civilians walking around suddenly put down a suitcase bomb and an EMP takes out the area for a few days. Sure, you capture the civilians and you put them to death for being traitors, but that one civilian's life stalled you for how long? How much money does it cost for you to put your army back together again? Now, of course, I will have an extremely large sniper division. I have to. We all know me. And you better believe that I'm packing a pretty large amount of artillery. But I'm just as powerful with my tanks. As far as boats go, though, I'm afraid I'm not going to be bringing much to the table there. A few destroyers here, a few gunboats there. Not really a lot in carriers. As far as my aircrafts go, besides the A-10 Warthog, which I'm surprised nobody else wanted to grab, which is basically a flying fortress, I'd probably big things like B-52s.
That's an understatement.
I know it is. They're tanks with teeth. I remember the descriptions of those suckers. My main
A-10 Warthog shoots a bullet the size of a Red Bull can.
No, it doesn't just shoot one.
Uranium.
It shoots several dozens of them at rapid pace, along with several rockets and anti-air-to-ground missiles.
It will shoot the tank hiding behind the tank.
Right. Listen, I know about the A-10s. Why do you think they're my Air Force? They've flown back with one wing. A plane flew back with a single wing, not two wings. Literally wing blown off and made it back and landed. That's how tough these things were. As far as my Air Force goes, other than A-10s, I'm using VTOLs, vertical takeoff and landing. Apache helicopters, Harrier jets, etc.
Yeah, them are pretty sick.
They're a little on the expensive side, though. But my the main reason I use those is if I absolutely, positively have to. If nothing else works, if none of my other tactics work, I will go lethal if I have to. But when I do, I need to remind you that I am bringing everything full bear. Much like Sub, I'm willing to use techniques like suitcase bombs and everything, but for me, nothing that lethal. EMPs. That's basically what I'd bring into a city. Shut it down. Why? Because the more I cost them, the less likely they are to want to continue a war against me. And in the end... What?
So technically you bleed their economy.
Yes. I fight the one thing that they can't really defend against. I bleed their economy.
No, that's my main idea too, is to bleed the economy.
Right, but your methods are a little more lethal. You're more likely to kill people. I'm less likely to kill people. I'm the guy that will make the opposing military not want to fight me just because I've irritated the shit out of them. The United States military did a similar thing. I can't remember which war it was, but where they found an enemy encampment, it was so well defended they couldn't get into it. So instead, they just set up speaker systems all around the place and just blasted music 24/7. This place was super defended. They couldn't get in. The cost would be too much. So they just blasted songs like Barbie Girl and Bop and the Macarena over and over again for like a week straight. And they gave up because they couldn't sleep. They couldn't focus anymore. That's what we do. Except instead of the Macarena, it's low-range subsonic energy that you don't know where it's coming from. Just enough to keep you from sleeping. Just enough to drive you fucking insane. Me? My way of fighting is simple. I don't want to kill you. If I have to, I will. But I don't want to fight you. I don't want to end lives. I want the wars to be the 7-year war where 3 people died of old age. That's how I want to be. Like I said, that doesn't mean that if I don't have to, I won't. I will fight back if I have to. My main method will be to use direct energy weapons and direct energy defenses. Some of the things I've seen on the internet and I've seen in military magazines are things like adaptive energy systems that can locate rockets and missiles and bombs falling from the sky and hit them with electromagnetic waves to destroy them in midair. It means that basically getting to me would be about taking out my power grid, which is basically on equivalent to Deathgasm, except I'm not going to be able to stop railguns with my defenses, and I'm most certainly not going to be able to do the damage that his railguns can do. However, A-10s, a couple cruisers, stealth-based tanks and Apaches that you can't find because you don't know where they are, if I have to, I will wreck house. But my main method of combat is just basically to make you not want to fight anymore. To deter combat. That's my method. That's my military. So let's go through my categories, shall we? Overall firepower. I'm sucking in that department. I do have some M4 carbines. I do have the A-10s and other weapons, but my main weapons are direct energy weapons, which are designed to not actually do a lot of damage. I could enter one of your cities with my direct energy weapons, take the entire city over, and not damage a building. I could basically take your entire city in its contents, everything in it, and not hurt a single person. Just irritate you to the point where you got to get the hell away from me. Because the voices in your head, the burns on your skin, or the breathing in of constant LSD and other medicines really is going to keep you to the point where you want to do anything. But unfortunately, as far as firepower goes, I got to say that I'm more than likely on par with Subliminal as far as firepower goes. I'm not going to win the direct war against you, but you're going to have a tough time winning the direct war against me too. Now the two categories that I suck horribly in. Cost of upkeep and cost of creation. Unfortunately, this is a lot of energy. This is a lot of electricity. This is a lot of high-tech weaponry. This is where I suck at. It's going to cost me a lot to keep my military going. However, the one advantage I have over Deathgasm, it's a slight advantage. He definitely has firepower over me by, well, I can't see how high my hand is stretched anymore. But his firepower definitely exceeds mine. But the thing is that when I fire a round from my weapons, I don't have to replace the round. It's just energy. I just got to recharge another cell. Survivability. I think this is where I have the advantage on almost everybody. With my weaponry and my defenses, I have the ability to basically deter anything that wants to come near me. Even aircraft, some of the direct energy weapons that they have out are specifically designed to fire and target anything coming from the air over a certain speed. And they fire lasers that are basically EMP wattage lasers, which basically shut down and destroy whatever they hit. They have been known to be able to detect and take down aircraft. Now, I'm pretty sure a supersonic jet like an Aurora or a Stealth on its way in, or on its way out rather, won't be something I could probably take down. That's why I'll have some AA guns, standard defenses. But anything else that comes anywhere near me, even something as strong as like a nuclear missile, could probably just get disabled in midair. Of course, I'd also have to worry about the chance of the EMP accidentally activating it in midair too. So, good thing we're not using weapons of mass destruction. Finally, overall effectiveness. I think this is also a category I have a lot in. I'm going to be known as the guy that doesn't want to kill, and my military isn't going to kill you. There are handheld direct energy weapons from the military as well. Handheld lasers called Dazzlers and EMPs and everything like that. The military can wield, and my soldiers will wield those. We'll also be using things like exoskeletons, mainly to help us move all our heavy, extremely powerful gear. But I'm pretty sure the world wouldn't mind the fact that I'm the guy trying to win wars with non-lethal weaponry. So, now we have two more things I want to go through real quick. First of all is how we would do against everybody else. Now, just to be on the safe side and to give some time here, I'm going to give Subliminal additional time when it comes to this. I feel that if we were all to go to war with each other, Nick would have the highest chance of surviving. Now, here's my reason on why. Not for nothing, Deathgasm. I love you, buddy. Your family. I love you. But I'm pretty sure everyone would be aiming at you first.
Most likely. I'd be terrified to attack you, though, Kai.
Oh, well, that's the thing. The thing is that...
I would not want to fight you at all.
I wouldn't want to fight you either.
And Subliminal, I wouldn't think twice about fighting if I had to. You, I'd try to, like, take my white tighties out and wave it on a flagpole.
Right. Well, the thing is that the most dangerous one to us is the cheapest one to us. See, technically, while everyone would aim at you first, Subliminal's the one that's going to be shutting down everyone else's power grid. When my power grid goes down, I am not packing much in the way of weaponry. When your power grid goes down, your main weaponry goes away. Now, that doesn't stop you. You're quite vicious without it. But Sub ain't going to fight you fair. And you still have to deal with Nick and, well, not myself anymore because I'm too busy trying to fix my power grid. This is where Nick's main advantage comes in. Nick is the average out of all of us. But he does not need a power grid to win. That's what gives him his advantage. He does not need a power grid. He can basically adapt to combat in any way he wants to. If the long range method isn't working, he can go for medium range. If medium ain't working, close range. He's got an average size Air Force, which means he's got average ways of defending ourselves. Once the power goes down thanks to Sub, we're going to go down too. And then Nick just needs to mop up the rest of us. Now, let's say that for some strange reason we're talking about Command and Conquer generals and we're all in one military group. We would fuck up a lot of the world.
Oh, without a doubt.
There are two countries I can think of that would be the biggest overall threats to us. And that's not talking once the United Nations becomes involved. Once the United Nations becomes involved, it's over for us. We can't win. I'm sorry. The problem is that they would just blank us. They would just nuke the shit out of us. That's what would happen. If all these countries in the world suddenly went and just turned all their firepower at us, we're not going to win. But if we're talking about how we would do against other armies together as a group, I'd say other than the United States and Russia, we could probably crush most armies. You know, the main reason comes with a simple thing. Subliminal's the simple thing. No offense to Subliminal, but Subliminal would be the reason why we'd be able to do so much damage. He's cheap, but he literally stated that his military is specialized in sabotage. Deathgasm has powerful railguns, which are just going to wreck everything. 5 railguns is about the...
I also have my insurgents, too.
Right, and you have your insurgents, too.
Countries and...
I have a few guys willing to drop EMPs, so yes. The problem is that eventually they're going to figure out who's doing it. And that's when the problem comes in. Once they figure out who's doing it, it's coming for us. It's coming for us. Like I said, there's a reason I made us like second world countries. We're not big. We're not big. If you combined all our armies together, we're about one first world country's army.
And I'm just sitting on my island drinking a freaking pina colada, watching the whole thing.
Going, good thing I chose Nerf War. And then he hears a charging sound. And his island just disappears as Deathgasm's going. I'd have to say, as far as overall power goes, Deathgasm has us all beat.
Oh, without a doubt.
As far as the cheapest military, Sub's got us crushed. Subliminal's got us destroyed as far as the cheapest military. I'm not talking tax, I'm just talking overall cost. His people are going to be happy and full because he's got all that extra money. As far as survivability goes, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'd have to give it to my military. We're exceptionally defensive military, which is what I designed us to be. Once you come within a certain range, that's about as far as we're going to let you go. But as far as overall effectiveness goes, I have to hand it over to the one and only Necro Nick. Necro Nick is the average of our groups. He's got the average firepower, the average price, the average upkeep, the average survivability, but as far as overall effectiveness goes, he's going to be the most likable out of all of us. And trust me, when it comes to the militaries, the country that people like is the country that's going to survive. Now, guys, I have a bit of fun for you guys. I want to make next week fun. I want to make next week enjoyable, but I don't want to pull too far away from war. Because war, it's fantastic. What I have to say is, what I feel we should do next week, and it's because it's been around, it's going to be doing its, No, Juggernaut, I am Average Man. Do not take my superhero name away from me, you bastard. He's Average Army Man. Get over with. Anyway, I think since it's going to be celebrating its 100th birthday very soon, that's right, it's been around for over almost 100 years, guys. I think what we should do is take a look through, and if we were going to have one, what we would choose to be our chosen Nerf weapons. Because it's Nerf or nothing. What do you guys say? 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a Nerf war. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a Nerf war. Who's in?
I'm in.
Now, the rules are going to be very simple. I'm going to make them right here, simple as possible. The first rule of Nerf war is you don't talk about Nerf. I'm just kidding. No. Okay, the first rule is you can carry what you can hold. Okay? If you want to go around with 50 Nerf pistols underneath your cloak and go, "What you buying, strangers?" you can do that. All right? Best character Resident Evil ever made. Hands down. Best character Resident Evil ever made. What you buying, stranger? Next, I'm talking any Nerf weapon that's ever existed, including banned ones, because there were a couple that were banned. You might remember the Nerf razors, those electric-powered ones that fired the little balls. The ones that went zing, 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 and they shot them really hard. They shot the little soccer ball-shaped ones, or the golf ball-shaped ones, and the kids accidentally were shooting each other in the throats and suffocating on them.
Because they were getting them in their mouths.
Or catching one in the eye, or catching one in the, if you want to use those, be my guest. What did I say about war? What did I say about war? There is no such thing as a fair war. That's right. Fair fight, fair war, there's no such thing. I will say this much, though. At least one Nerf melee weapon. At least one. If you want to become the frickin' Psycho Berserker from frickin' Borderlands 2, if you want to become what's his name? It begins with a K.
Krieg.
If you want to be Krieg and come running with 2 Nerf axes, jumped over the frickin' top of a table coming down, you be my damn guest. But next week, guys, once we find out a day, it's Nerf or nothing. All right? I'll give you guys an entire week or more, depending on schedules, to prepare yourself for a Nerf fight. Because, guys, I want you to know that this is important, because one of the charity events I want to do is with the Cancer Society in St. Jude's, and I want to get a bunch of kids. I want to rent out a big area, maybe like a YMCA or something. Rent it out for a night and bring the kids in with us and have a giant Nerf war and have it all recorded for charity.
Nice.
So this will give me an idea. This will give me an idea of what you guys need, and if we have to purchase them, so we know that we have to start looking on like eBay and things like that. All right. So once again, guys, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've declared this Nerf war. Who's bringing it? Which one of us is the true Nerf warrior?
So did Necro win the war, or is there like a ranking system who would basically go like 1, 2, 3, 4?
If I were going to say who would win a direct war, where we were
just saying the war in general.
In the war in general, I'd say that Necro probably has the best overall chance, followed by you, followed by Deathgasm, followed by myself. And the only reason why I say followed by myself is because I am more of the defensive combatant here. It'd be hard to pin Nick down because of his ability to alternate himself in combat. You could never really prepare. He can go from snipers to assault troopers to urban ops very quickly. And you'd have to deal with the constant changing flow. Not to mention that he kind of has no problem with just bombing the hell out of the woods, too. You would go next because it's harder to defend against you because your main tactic in combat is to be a sneaky shadow warrior. And in case you didn't know it, those are the hardest ones to defend against. A column of tanks, you know where the column of tanks are. But the guy who just dug 3 different punchy stick traps could be behind that tree, in a hole, or already walking back to town to have food. You just don't know it. Deathgasm is just overall death, literally. He's just death. His main weapons, his main capabilities, he's expensive, but he's going to end the war. You can start the war against him, but he will end it. And as for me, I'm the guy you want to go at if you want to lose a lot of money. You will lose so much money going up against me, you'll be too poor to fight me after a while. And your soldiers will just be sick and tired of fighting me. But as far as power goes, Deathgasm. As far as the person I definitely wouldn't want to fight against, Subliminal. As far as the person I'm more likely to side with would probably be Nick, or Deathgasm, or Subliminal. And as the one I think who could take me down the easiest, Mama, that's cheating. You always win. Mama could take me down the easiest. All right, just saying. How about you, Deathgasm? Who do you think would be the biggest threat out of the guys here? Who you don't want to go against?
I would not want to go up against you. Simple as that.
All right. Now,
because you would just drain my economy, and I wouldn't be able to fire my fucking big beefy fucking rail boys anymore.
So which group would you?
And where would the fun be in that?
Wait, who do you think you could take the easiest?
Honestly, how you say Nick could switch easily?
Mm-hmm.
My guys ain't just engineers.
Well, I know.
They're trained to fight and kill.
Well, right. The only reason I chose his as the most adaptive is the fact that it's not just that. He also has Humvees that are designed to swap between different pieces as well. His aircrafts are capable of switching. It's his unpredictability that makes him dangerous. He doesn't have the overall firepower you have. He doesn't have the cheapness that Sub has, and he doesn't have the defenses that I do. But what he makes up for is, like I said, you suddenly get caught by a bunch of sniper fire. What's your first thought process going to be? To move into cover. Next thing you know, the snipers are gone, but now you have assault rifle fire coming down on you. You go to move into the buildings, and next thing you know, shotgun wielders are coming in after you. He can quickly adapt to the combat. However, he's not going to adapt to artillery barrages and railguns.
No.
No, that's where you'd have him.
Honestly, I feel like I'd be able to take Sub in a way because of my insurgents.
Right, it would be insurgent versus insurgent.
My insurgents ain't just gonna freaking destroy shit. They're gonna op shit out. They're gonna take locations. They are going to sabotage a lot. Like, my guys ain't specialized in sabotage, but they'll take down a power grid. They'll take down your infrastructure.
But what it comes down to is, what it comes down to is who's specialized more. Your guys are, you have a specialization, but he quite literally stated that's how his guys are trained. That means he'd be able to take your stuff down faster. Yeah. But once again, as far as defenses go, he's using pit traps and that kind of stuff when you could quite literally level him from over 150 miles away with railguns.
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't shut down your power
grid. I could level his island pretty quick. It'd probably take about 15 fucking rails, but like 15 shots to level his entire outpost, but still 15 times 3, 45 million. I think that's worth getting him off the map quick.
Okay, touche. Sub.
I could just like level the ground of all of you and be done with it.
So,
but then I got the whole rest of the world after me.
Right. So,
how are you supposed to level my army when they're mostly underground and you know where they're at?
Well, the problem with him is he's using what's called a railgun.
I'm pretty sure if I put enough rails into the ground, I'm going to destroy enough shit.
How a railgun works is it doesn't...
Remember, they can punch through a mountain.
But you're only be broke, man. if you could even afford it after building all that
Hey,
and
guys,
fucking
it's opinion. It's
making
opinion.
all the ammo for it, and then also the power to fucking make it even go.
Hey, you said
Sub, it's just an opinion.
You're
You're
willing
next.
to spend that much money, man.
Sub, you're next. Which is the army you're the most
Honestly,
afraid
to
of?
get you off the map, it would be worth it.
Which
To
army
get
are you the
you
most
off the
scared
map,
of?
Sub, it
And which
would be
army do you
worth
think
it.
you could take the easiest? Come on, Sub. Which army are you the most scared of out of the three of us?
What do I want to take on?
Yeah, which is the last army out of the three of us you'd want to take on?
Necros, because this is adaptable, which means you can adapt while he's fighting me.
Okay. Now, who do you want to get your grubby little hands around first, as far as which one of us you think you could take down the easiest?
Who do I take down the easiest, or who do I want to take down first?
No, who do you
Because
think?
there's two different answers right there.
Who do you think would be the easiest for your military to take down? And let's look again. I am not going to take any offense if you say. There you go. See, I'm not taking any offense to it. Once my power grid gets shut down,
Who would I go for first? But who would I go for first? Mr. Railgun Boy, so he doesn't have his toys.
Oh, that sounds like fight
I
words.
knew that was coming. But that's why I unload 15 freaking railgun rounds into your freaking territory.
Necro, which is the army you're least likely to want to go against because you're afraid of them, and which is which is the easiest one for you? Who do you think you'd take down the easiest, and who would be the last one you'd want to face off against?
Honestly, it would be one that we would want to take down. Like, who I want to be able to take down. It's toss up between you and Deathgasm.
Okay.
You, for your pure defense, would probably outwit me. And his pure firepower, if I was to go on this island, I'd be no match.
All right.
Now, if Deathgasm was caught out in the environment of not his choosing, I might have a better chance, and probably could take him out.
Well, right. Home field advantage is always going to give you the biggest advantage. See, Deathgasm's railguns, they're not mobile on the ground. They're so big and heavy, there's only one way they could be mobilized. That's why they're only found on Navy carriers. But they also have quite the range on them, so gotta be careful of that.
Right.
But home field advantage will always be the biggest advantage you have. For instance, take Subliminal, for instance. Hometown, you're not going to want to send in infantry or vehicles against him. You'd lose out.
Right.
You'd have to either take it to the air or you'd have to bombard him. However, take Subliminal and put him in the middle of, say, I don't know, the desert, where all of his advantages are gone because there's no woodlands anymore, there's no swamplands anymore. You're going to have a bigger advantage. Same thing with me. If I'm not near my power grid, what am I going to do to you guys? Everything, almost everything I have is battery run, other than the simpler vehicles. I gotta have a Radio Shack nearby to fight you guys if I'm on your territory, and I don't think Radio Shacks exist anymore.
Nope.
Not that I know of. Which is a damn shame.
Sub, you would probably be my easiest target to go after.
Okay, so
If I haven't already infiltrated you, yeah.
according to the statistics of the voting, it would appear that the most dangerous army here, which is the one that everybody would be trying to kill off first, surprisingly, is not Deathgasm. Because so far, everyone who's been talking has been talking about how they would want to form and target poor Sub. So as far as the most likely to get targeted, I thought it was going to be Deathgasm, but apparently from all of our opinions, it's Sub. So Sub, congratulations.
I'm just a light guy.
Congratulations, Sub. You are the MVP of this war. You are the most dangerous because everybody wants to shut you down first. Congratulations, my friend. Congratulations.
Shit. I didn't know I was that popular.
Yeah, apparently you've made yourself a little too popular.
Yeah. We'll crown you as a danger maniac that we're kind of terrified of. See, I know I wouldn't have to fear Kaiju because I wouldn't fuck with them.
See? Smart man. I'm defensive. I don't want to screw with anybody, but if you screw with me, I'm going to shut you down.
See, you kind of have the same tactics of me. Disable and destroy countries from within. So that's why I want you as a pitcher, son.
I understand. I fully understand.
Why? I'd be a great ally.
I'm telling you. But folks,
yes, if you wanted to work together with me and you didn't go behind my back and take out my rail guns.
Just don't take any food.
Deathgasm. I have a statement from the United States Navy that I'm going to show you.
What's that?
Read the statement from the United States Navy.
Hello? Oh, there's no one there. Listen, just because they paused the research doesn't mean he can't pick it up.
Right. But I'm just saying, it's the whole thing. You would have to constantly keep your rail guns up, especially with the capacitors and everything.
Listen, we already talked about that in his upkeep. Yeah. He is the most expensive one of us. As far as power goes, he needs it more than anybody. Unlike Subliminal, who can run on a couple people on exercise bikes and a couple hamster wheels, me and him cannot. We're talking needing like pure geothermal and tidal power. Like I don't even think nuclear energy would be able to keep up with us. We would need like a pure, unconstrained energy source. Nick's just like the regular U.S., so he's running on that and sub. He's got 4 really fat guys on bicycles with Twinkie hats. Just that's running his entire country. That's all he needs as far as power goes. He is literally the cheapest one. For the price it would cost for his entire army, it would be like maybe 2 shots of his railguns. That's the equivalent of his army's cost. Just to give you an example of how expensive Deathgasm is compared to him. Does that make him any less effective? No. A military is a military, and it's as effective as the soldiers in it.
So, if their morale is up and happy, they're more likely to fight.
Yes, but getting a third of your army crushed by a single railgun spike, that's pretty bad for morale.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is this. We're all dangerous.
You gotta figure out where the base is at and everything first.
Well, we're all dangerous in our own ways, and we're all defensive in our own ways. What comes down to it is the question I'm about to ask. Before we go, would any of y'all start a fight with any of y'all?
No. I'd probably be an ally with most of these. In all honesty. Especially if we want to take over the world at any point in time,
Like I said, I'm just a guy sitting on his lounge chair on the beach with a freaking pina colada just watching the whole thing.
What he doesn't realize that is
actually what Juggernaut. If I join you every once in a while, smoke a cigar on the island.
What Juggernaut doesn't know is that
I'd have to go after Juggernaut.
The beach chair that he's on is actually 2 of the insurgents from Subliminal dressed up as the chair.
My island would be neutral ground, okay?
Hey, listen.
You probably put a collider into this, so I'm gonna have to go after you, man.
Sweden's neutral too, and they've got stealth tanks, okay?
Kyle.
Yo.
I'm gonna add one more thing.
Okay.
Now, who would be the person you most ally with out of the 4 of us?
Ooh. That's a tough one.
That's the answer.
If I had to choose, that's a tough one. Deathgasm would get me the firepower I would require, hands down. Subliminal is kind of more in my style. We're more like, we don't want to kill people. We just want to take things down. But again, so are Deathgasm's agents. If you're trying to tell me which one I would side with, I really don't think I could choose any one of you together. I'd have to choose all of you. Because I'm not really, with my methodology, I really gain very little from siding with any of you other than for a defensive purpose. My goal is not to kill anyone. Simple enough. Nick, you have adaptive military specially designed for killing. Deathgasm. Subliminal, on the other hand, I mean, Subliminal is already talking about booby traps, Molotov cocktails, detonating and destroying power grids. I mean, just the fact that he literally has a group of people called assassins and a group of people called poisoners, that's pretty much enough of a hint to know that his I'm not killing people methodology is a little on the small side. However, if I were to pick you guys as far as partners to defend a country or defend myself, it would definitely, and this is to no offense to anybody, probably Sub, Deathgasm, and then Necro. The reason for Sub is Sub could help shut down the other armies, thus maybe reducing the amount of conflict we have to have. Deathgasm can help shut down the other armies and possibly stop the death and destruction. Nick, you're the guy I want to bring in case I can't stop the army by doing that. You know, shutting down a power grid is one thing, but if I'm up against somebody like China who's going to say, let's keep going, well then, Sub is not going to be all that much help to me. Deathgasm, on the other hand, he's got the firepower and you've got the adaptive fire capabilities. You know, it comes down to the point that my methodology in combat is just a lot different from your guys. That's why me picking an alliance is kind of different. I'm the guy who's gonna... Deathgasm, who would you sign up with, Deathgasm? Who would be your ally?
I feel like if there would be no betrayals, like if it was like a full treaty, I feel like I go with Sub.
I figured as much.
I feel like me and him working together, we could take you both out from internally.
Well, yeah. Why do you think
you guys realized it?
Well, why do you think I put myself down as literally the weakest military? Because my military's design isn't for offense. Like I said before, much like you, Deathgasm, once the power grid goes down, I'm forced to bring out what little lethal firepower I have. Fireworks, I should say. Sub, on the other hand, you can...
that warthog I'm kind of terrified of because I'm not sure if my ships would be able to stop that.
You just have to fire...
I'm not sure if a battleship would be able to shoot down a warthog for how quick they are.
Just shoot the railgun in the general direction. You don't have to hit it. The shockwave will take them down.
Really?
Well, the thing about the railgun is the shell, if you will, that it fires is not the lethal part of it. I mean, yes, it will penetrate everything, but it has this massive shockwave around it because it's firing so fast. It's not firing slowly. It's firing at a...
They said the projectile can hit Mach 7.
Which no aircraft known to man can reach. It would tear up trees. It would pull down power. It would be like a Class 3 tornado going through that area. You don't have to... See, with it, you don't have to hit the target dead on. They won't come after you after the first shot. That would be all you would need. It's a fire and you weapon. You have 5 of them.
So we team. So we teaming.
I mean, yeah, why not?
Yo, much like
most likely that you would team with, Sub.
See, here's the issue. I have the same philosophy that Kaiju has. I don't want to kill people if I don't have to.
So we'd be more likely to team up.
Right. But I'm not saying I want to team up with all of you, because every one of us has a certain thing that I would need to have a better survivability chance.
That's the big problem with our armies. Our armies were just... Not a single military of ours is close to the other.
Not only that, I'd be able to help fund you guys as well.
See, there's another
excess money.
I mean, I'd also side up with
Juggernaut Jared. You could give me more railgun money.
I'd also side up with Juggernaut Jared because he's able to have this island. Kick back on the island.
For my taste.
Well, Necro, you brought up the
So
question.
the infinity tanks are a go. Like, we can bump that number up to 1,000 infinity tanks and just mind fuck them.
Necro, who would you sign up with? Who's your MVP of signing up? Who's the player you're most likely to join with?
Well, I wanted to go with Sub or you.
Okay. So once again, I have to give this award to Sub.
You would give me a lot more defense than I would have, which would be a more beneficial thing. But then Sub with his booby trapping would also provide something that my army does not have.
Right.
As a matchup.
All right. Well, folks. Oh, and one more thing. When I say nerf or nothing, I do mean nerf or nothing. There are nerf drones out there, by the way. There are nerf turrets. I saw a nerf weapon that you can stick to a wall and control with your phone. It's a turret and a camera. Okay?
Yep.
It's nerf or nothing, folks. That's all I'm saying. So next
I'd be the first person to be attacked, and I'd also be the first person to be out. I just want to make that clear, right?
Yes, if you want to talk about the true winner here, the winner
If
is
we're not allies, you're getting...
Yeah. Basically,
So
basically, our armies go like this: Sub, Deathgasm, Necro, and if I could go lower than the floor, Kaiju K. But until next time, folks, I'm crying myself to sleep, Kaiju K.
Necro Nick.
I'm Jared.
Weird messages.
And we will see you all in the future, everyone.